She has 12 books behind her. She's exhibited in some of the most important galleries around the world. Dayanita Singh is an artist who uses the camera as a medium. I am with her in her temporary studio in Delhi to speak to her about her life and her work. Dayanita, thank you for being with us and for showing us your work here. Why photography? Why is the camera your medium?
I came to photography because at that time it gave me the possibility to be free. I didn't really come to photography because I loved the medium. Okay. I just thought there were no women in photography at that time, and
there were very few.
None that I knew of.
Acha, okay.
And none in Delhi.
Okay.
So I didn't know any women in photography. So I thought, okay, I can be a photographer and then I can travel where I like, with whoever I like. I don't have to be bound by any social conventions of what a woman can do and not do.
But what made you take it up full time? Because sometimes people do it as a hobby. And then in your case, you decided to take it up as a full-time profession.
Well, once you start working with photography, you get really hooked to it because it's quite a magical medium. But I think I always knew from the beginning that I grew up in a house with a mother who photographed constantly and made family albums.
All right.
So for me, photographs were made to make books. Okay. So I came to photography in that way, you could say, from the time I was born, because I was so photographed.
Okay.
And in fact, if there was anything I hated in my childhood, it was being photographed.
Okay.
Because it always delayed every departure. But once I started working with photography and I saw how it could open the world for me, I could go anywhere, enter any situation, I thought this is it. And it was late 80s. So at that time, the only way to be a photographer was to be a photojournalist.
Right.
So I started off as a photojournalist for about 2-3 years.
Where were you working? Or were you freelancing?
I was working for an agency in New York.
Okay.
So I was sending images mainly for the American media. And that is what made me realize I don't want to be a photojournalist, because at that time, the stories they wanted were either disaster or exotic, both of which were not women like you and me, you know. They either wanted the prostitutes or the Maharanis.
Okay.
And that was not very comfortable, because if you know...
Even as a photojournalist?
Yes, because they wanted, at that time, remember I'm talking about late 80s, they wanted a certain image of India, which was not my image of India.
But as a photojournalist, you would probably be reporting, covering news.
But I was never a news photojournalist.
Okay, yeah.
I would be doing the photo essays for magazines.
Okay.
So 8-10 pages. Features.
Right.
Yeah, so I was more a features photographer.
Okay.
Which meant I got more involved in the subject.
Yeah.
Which meant if I was working with the children of the prostitutes, I couldn't just walk away after 2 weeks because the story was over. I couldn't just, and then you get into that dilemma, as I'm sure you have been, like, you know, am I a journalist or an activist? Because there are some issues that are so harsh that you can't just justify being a photographer. You just have to, you know, jump right in. And that is a big problem, I think, when artists even try to become activists, because I think being an activist is really a full-time commitment.
Yeah,
and I wanted that commitment for my photography, so I left photojournalism.
Okay. So is that why, for instance, your subjects become books almost? For instance, Zakir Hussain became your first book.
Zakir book I made even before I became a photojournalist.
Okay.
And
tell us how it
Zakir
happened.
So it's a very quite well-known story now,
but our audience would always love to know.
So I was a student at NID, National Institute of Design.
Yeah.
I was 18 years old and I had to do an assignment on the moods of a person. So I heard that Zakir was playing at IIM with Ravi ji, and I decided कि चलो let me quickly go, I'll photograph his face, he makes all those different expressions, and moods of a person जो assignment थी class के लिए, that will get done, and फिर मैं Bombay चली जाऊँगी and I can have a nice weekend with my friends. So I went to photograph the concert, he was playing with Ravi ji, and I picked up my camera to take a picture. And the organizer just nudged me like that to say stop.
Okay.
But I fell in front of that hall full of people. So I was very upset and very angry, and of course I was asked to leave the hall. So I went and I sat outside. And then program khatam hua at some point and Zakir came out. He was not such a big star at that time. This is 81.
Right.
And I saw him and he sort of looked at me because he must have seen me being pushed. And I stood up and I put my hands on my hips like that and I said, Mr. Hussain, I'm a young student today. Someday I'll be an important photographer, then we'll see. And I started crying. So he said, you know, इसमें क्या बात है, आप मेरी तस्वीरें लेना चाहते हैं, आप कल भी ले सकते हैं, लेकिन इजाज़त लेनी पड़ती है. So I said, नहीं, it's a public concert. He said, it's in a private space. हुआ क्या था कि रवि जी had added a fret to his sitar.
I see, okay.
वो कुछ experiment कर रहे थे. And he didn't want it documented, simple as that. So he had said no photography. मुझे ये सब पता नहीं था तो मैंने permission नहीं ली थी. तो जाकिर ने बोला तुम कल सुबह आके मेरी तस्वीरें ले सकते हो जब मैं अपना रियाज कर रहा हूँ.
Okay.
I'll be making the same faces. So I said, अच्छा. But I was 18 years old. And एक तो to go to a man's hotel room was unheard of. And musicians ki, you know, like I didn't know musicians before. So I sat with my friends all night. One of them in fact is here, Nalin Pandya, thinking ke jaएं या ना जाएं. And finally it was decided at about 4 in the morning कि if you want to do something in life, you can't bother about what people will say.
Right.
So I went, I took the pictures, and then Zakir said, if you want to photograph more, come with me, we are going to Porbandar. Jog Saab, Vijay Kichlu, Girja Devi, Shivji, Hariji. So I said, this is amazing. And that was the time I decided I'm going to be a photographer.
Okay.
That as a photographer, I can access incredible worlds that otherwise I would not have access to. So for 6 winters, I traveled with this same group of musicians in the, it was called the ITC Sangeet Sammelan. एक बस लेके कलकत्ता से शुरू होती थी, बस की सीट्स निकाल देते थे, गद्दे लग जाते थे, and we used to go to schools and colleges. They used to perform, I used to take photos. And उसके बाद रात को जो बातचीत होती थी सब musicians की, I mean, I got the best education of my life. And Zakir took it upon himself to become my mentor.
Oh, wonderful.
And he was very strict. And even today, just last week, I was somewhere, I was asked to introduce myself, and I said, I'm Dayanita Singh, I'm an artist who works with photography. I come from the Zakir Hussain Academy of Focus.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly like that. Because Zakir taught me the most important lesson in being an artist, which is really to focus, to be completely 100% here right now, regardless of what has happened before, what needs to be done later, and to push your medium.
You told us that he taught you how to do it. Now, why don't you tell us how to do it? This would be a great takeaway for budding artists and artists who are already around.
He taught me the importance of understanding your medium.
Right.
There's the rigor, you know, to just understanding your material, your camera, your film, your sensors, your light, your most important tool. So you have to master that. There is no getting around that. There's no shortcuts to that. And then you have to challenge it, and you have to push the medium, and you have to push yourself. And each, in his case, a concert, in my case, a book, has to push the limits of what I have done before, what has been done before.
No, but what about focus?
Focus is just, you really center yourself.
How do you do that? When you do it to yourself now, after having gone through the rigor of learning it, how would you do it?
You have to shut everything else out of your mind. And you have to really know and train yourself to be here, in the present, working. There's nothing in the world that is more important than that situation that you're in.
So how do you shut things out?
One follows the other. You get into a situation like when I go into an archive that I have spent months getting permission to get into. I am there. Phones are off. Nobody else is around. I even asked the archivist if they wouldn't mind just going to the side. I'm alone in that space. And I just switch off from everything else by completely focusing my attention on you, if it's a portrait, on the files, because I'm photographing the files so much. It's just about concentrating your attention. It's like going like that and shutting out everything else. So nothing in the world is more important at that time.
Right.
So you have to become quite rigid about that, you know. And I'm not a, there are other ways of doing it. You can be what I like to call a butterfly artist.
What's that?
You can do a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, make those people happy, make that person happy, idhar, udhar, you know. You can flit around. Kabhi thodi photo kar li, thoda ye kar liya, thoda wo kar liya. I'm not that kind of artist. I'm very, very, remember Zakir. Remember that 80s mein, he was an accompanist.
Right.
He was not the main player. He was what is considered almost like a bad word now. He was the tabalchi. And look what he did with his medium. I saw that. No, I was witness to that from the beginning of the 80s to the end of the 80s when he started to do solos.
Right.
And to a point where people would go to concerts if Zakir was playing. No?
Yeah, he became the star attraction.
But he took something, he took the medium that was an accompanist medium and brought it to the forefront because he believed in it, because he put all his attention into that. So even if he's talking to you and you think he's completely present in that, he's all the time calculating rhythms. You'll see his hands are always going like that, not because he's doing a practice. So similarly, I'm talking to you, I'm answering your questions, but I'm very, very aware of the light falling on your face, and I know that there's a certain shadow on your nose, and so if I were to just go slightly this way, if I were taking a picture, that shadow moves away. So it's just, light has just become my second language. I'm always watching the light, regardless of whether I'm taking a photograph or not.
Right.
I'm aware of the shadow of the camera that is falling on the wall, and it's actually quite an interesting image.
So tell me, when did this transition happen that you followed him and the group of musicians for, like you said, 6 summers or 6 winters? So then how did it culminate in a book?
So I had to do for my diploma project, or just before the diploma project, a book design project.
Okay, okay.
At NID.
All right.
So I just used the photos that I had to make a book, and I had no ideas about what a book should be.
Oh, okay.
You know, what is a photo book? There were not photo books at that time. We just had a few Russian books that would come from Russia to USSR. I don't know if you would remember USSR embassy or something. They would bring in some photo books, but that was it. So I made up my own rules of what a book should be. So it's part biography, part Vijay Kichlu talking about Zakir, you know, made it all up, put his timetable there as well.
Right.
And so before I finished at NID, I had already published a book.
Okay.
But it was a book that was sold finally on the footpath because people couldn't understand how you can make a book about one person. This is 86 we are talking about.
But subsequently it did well? Or no?
Well, now it's a rare book. There's, I think you might find it on eBay for $300 or something like that.
Okay, the next person that you focused on was Mona.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that. That's also been talked about a lot, but even then, what has been your most special takeaway from that association?
You know, I wouldn't be who I am without these two, Zakir and Mona. Because Mona taught me how to live a little bit outside society, that you don't have to fit in.
Right.
That you don't have to be like everybody. And she's clearly much more different than me.
Yes.
But Mona is a eunuch, as you know, who I befriended in '89 because of a journalistic assignment. Then the film had to be thrown away.
So that journalistic assignment was what?
Journalistic assignment was like what I told you. They wanted a hijra story. But already I knew that I didn't want to do a hijra story like everybody else. And I had heard that there's this Mona Ahmed in Turkman Gate. And I want to go and find Mona Ahmed. I found her, but she never allowed herself to be filmed. But she agreed. And so I took the pictures. At the end of the shoot, after a full day, I said, oh, the readers in London Times will be very happy. She said, you didn't tell me London Times, you told me New York Times. I said, I don't work for New York Times, I work for London Times. She said, ये तो गड़बड़ हो गई क्योंकि मेरे बहुत रिश्तेदार हैं वहाँ पर. मुझे आप ये फिल्म नहीं इस्तेमाल कर सकते. And I thought, there goes my career. I just started working for London Times.
Okay.
Just done this story. And I was so scared of eunuchs at that time. And it was a house full of eunuchs. मैं अकेले गई थी. I couldn't have a fight with them. So I had to give her the film. So she took the film from me, out of my camera, and threw it in the गीला garbage. ये भी नहीं कि सूखे garbage में डाला है. वो सब. And then she hugged me. And I was on the phone to her an hour ago. She is part of Museum of Chance. She is part of everything I do, just as Zakir is. So these have been sort of two pillars, very, very different people.
Subsequently, how did she agree?
She didn't agree. She never agreed. And it was clear that I was never going to photograph her for anything.
Okay.
But when she had a birthday party for her daughter, who she had adopted, where she called 2,000 eunuchs from Bangladesh, Pakistan and India, she would call me to take photos because she would get them free.
Right.
And ghar ki baat thi by then, you know, we were like two girlfriends inside the house and man-woman outside.
Okay.
But we had this wonderful mixed relationship. And so I would take these pictures. So 89 से लेके 97 तक कभी वो तस्वीरें कहीं छपी नहीं. एक बारी इंडिपेंडेंट में छपी थी. उधर उन्होंने कैस्ट्रेशन के बारे में इतना लिख दिया that she got very upset. तो I couldn't give the pictures. 97 में मेरे ऊपर एक किताब बन रही थी स्विट्ज़रलैंड में. तो मैंने वॉल्टर केलर जो पब्लिशर थे उनको ये मोना का काम दिखाया और बोला मैं इनको सालों से तस्वीरें ले रही हूँ, ये मुझे छापने नहीं देती, लेकिन मेरी अगर रिट्रोस्पेक्टिव टाइप किताब बन रही है, so I must put Mona in because she is also a constant.
Yeah.
He looked at the photographs and he said, this is amazing, we have to make a book on her. I said, she'll never agree.
Okay.
He said, at least ask her. So I sent her a fax through my mother.
This was after how many years of association?
This was after 97, after 8 years.
Okay. And you were in regular touch?
Regular. She's, you could say, my best friend.
Okay.
And film khatam karne ke liye, I used to take some pictures of her.
Okay.
So, किसी सरोज खान किया, फिर उसके बाद कुछ film रह गई तो मोना की तस्वीरें, you know, sort of by her. So he loved the work and we sent this fax saying, world's best publisher would like to make a book on your unique self. Okay. Do you agree? So she sent a fax back through my mother saying, whole world calls me eunuch, you call me unique.
Okay.
First you tell me which is true, then I will answer you.
Oh, lovely.
So luckily it came, now I know Mona, वो तो बात ही ऐसी करती है, she is like some mystic almost.
Okay.
लेकिन Walter Keller read this and he said, my God, I can't believe this, she is going to write the text.
Oh.
So I said, आप स्विट्जरलैंड में बैठे हो, what do you know what it's like to be a eunuch, thrown out of the eunuchs community, living in the graveyard, looking after graves. So, you know, you don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
He said, she can write the text. Aur wohi ho. In 2001, we made a book, myself, Mona Ahmed. Mona had written the texts, dictated them in the form of emails to the publisher, and as she wanted, the Swiss ambassador came to the graveyard to release the book.
Wonderful.
I wish I had some footage of it.
Yeah. The title of Go Away Closer is so intriguing, and also it sort of makes you so curious. How did that happen?
You know, I photographed this friend's daughter who I've been photographing since she was a child, and she had come back from school, and she was you know, as you often are, cranky and upset, and went to her bed, and I was trying to take her pictures. So partly she was saying like, don't bother me. And I just took one frame, and then I suddenly felt this go away closer. It was a word that I had thought about in response to a romantic relationship that had been very important to me.
Okay.
And when I was asked to describe that feeling of how do you feel now, or how do you feel in this relationship, I always felt this go away closer, you know? How can it's a feeling that can happen between parents. You love them, but you can't live with them. Could happen with your children. It certainly happens with your partner. So when I photographed this girl, suddenly those words came back to me, go away closer. So I felt in her this same mood of go away closer. I was reminded of that feeling that came with love, of go away closer. And I thought, I want to go back to Delhi and look through my contact sheets, because I know this feeling and I've photographed with it before.
Okay.
That has this go away closer feeling. And that's how I made the Go Away Closer book. It was from images that I had thought were sort of sideys, like not my main images, not the images that I was there to make, that were taken on the side.
Okay.
And that's what formed the whole Go Away Closer book. So I was I was editing with a certain feeling.
Okay.
It wasn't really the content, and it's the same thing now. I edit tonally because of, I think, this training of being around that I have got by being around classical musicians. I'm very privileged. I have such an incredible education. No photo school, art school, university could give me that education.
Yeah.
That I got traveling with the musicians. Museum of Chance, where we are sitting, is edited tonally. It's not just by what is in the image.
So talking about this most recent project of yours, when you say you edited it tonally, what actually went into it?
So you take 200 prints, 500 prints that you think could be Museum of Chance, but you get a sense, it's very, very difficult to explain what it is, but you know it. This tone that suggests Museum of Chance. And so then you might have 300 prints, but there are only 3 that seem to have this Museum of Chance tone.
Okay.
But there is no, it can't be measured on a scale of any kind. I can't describe it in words to you, but I know it. And if you work long enough with my images, you will know it also.
What is kitchen museum, that term that has come in?
Kitchen museum came up because I used to make these little black books for friends that I would travel with.
Okay.
By cutting up my contact sheets.
Okay.
And I used to make 2 copies. One was kept with me and one was kept with the person that I sent it to. They could either travel with it because it was a small little book, and in fact, sent a letter came from that.
Okay.
So each of these was a book that I made for example, let me find the Calcutta one. This was made for the publisher, Steidl.
Okay.
I was traveling with him, and so I wanted to make a letter for him. So I made a letter with words. But then I made it in this format where it also becomes an exhibition.
Oh, okay.
Right? So this was the first time that the book became an exhibition, and because it's a book, it's not precious like a silver gelatine print which you can't touch. So then we published this box, sent a letter. So the originals of this is called the Kitchen Museum, simply because it is in my kitchen. There are 32 of them.
Okay.
And that is where, actually it's a great question you asked me, because that is where I started to feel I can make my own museum. Because I would show this work to museum curators and to friends having seminars on museums, and I would say to them, this is also a museum, and they would say, how can it be a museum? And I said, it's my kitchen museum. So it started as a bit of a joke. And
but why the term museum? Why has that been incorporated into your work?
Because I love museums. When I go to a place, I first want to go to the oldest museum. I want to go to the house museum. And in India, we have these wonderful house museums, memorial museums, like NGR's museum in Chennai and Kamaraj's museum. And it's my way of engaging with the place. And I love the idea that there is a display collection, but there's also a reserve collection. And with the Kitchen Museum, it was that you can see the display, but you can't really see what's inside. That's like the storage. So to me, if there's a collection of valuable saris, valuable jewelry, valuable anything, and there is a display element, there is a reserve collection, and there is a catalog possibility, to me that's a museum. So you could argue and say that your bedside table is also, bedside drawer is a museum, and I would agree with you. I think it's wonderful if one can have a much wider explanation for the term museum rather than the museums that we know. And I hope now Museum Bhavan is my own museum. It's my museum of 9 museums. And I decide that I want to now call it Ongoing Museum. I just changed the name. Or there's a Museum of Furniture, and I'm now going to call it Museum of Conversation.
When you embark on a project, do you say, okay, this is going to be a book, or this is going to be something which is going to take me a year? How do you sort of, where does the idea germinate generally, and how long do you feel you can sustain that idea? How does that work for you as an
Great
artist?
question. It's exactly the opposite. If you said, I'm going to make a book or I'm going to make a film, finished. There's no point going ahead with the project.
Okay.
And I don't think of them as projects.
Okay.
These are lifelong obsessions. I will be photographing furniture till the day I die. Archives, I can never have enough of archives.
But when is it that you tell yourself, okay, I am ready to exhibit?
Even that is not a question anymore for me, because this museum is an ongoing museum, right?
But so far, all these years, there has been a time when you've told yourself, Dayanita, now I'm ready to show this stuff to the world.
Let's just go back to the question that you asked me. I photograph with a certain inner focus. Okay, I've been listening to Rashid Khan singing. I've been reading a certain book, and I'm going out to photograph in the archives. I'm not just photographing what I got permission for. I'm also photographing the table. I'm photographing the man or the woman who looks after the archives. I'm photographing the cyclostyle shop outside as well. I don't stop myself. And then I have these long tables on which I put out all the images. And from that I live with that full edit, and then the form emerges from the material that I have collected.
Okay.
And then I feel, yes, maybe now I'm ready to make a book about the doors of different archives.
Do you play back your work to somebody before you decide, okay, now I'm ready to do this?
To somebody?
As in, do you show your work to somebody before you tell yourself, okay, I'm now ready to draw out the curtains and show this work to the world?
I have just 2-3 people that I really listen to. And this is my advice to all young artists, that you have to be really careful in who you show your work to when you're developing it. It's a very delicate process.
Yes.
And the more people you ask, the more voices in your head. And if being an artist is finding a voice of your own, you can't have too many voices. So I have a few people, 2 or 1 now, that I would show the work to when I feel something is happening, not even in the beginning. Because you see, you might have just the right understanding of it, but if you come in and you say, actually this is about such and such, you ruin the process for me. I love the process.
Yes.
And I want to stay with that process, and the process dictates the form. So the other people have no role to play at that time. And I think it's really on one's own that you know now you're ready to show to the one person.
Okay.
But if I show it to 10 people, as young artists like to do, and 9 people have loved something, they'll say, okay, that's the work I have to do. And I would say, no, that's the work you shouldn't do, because for sure you're doing something that caters to mediocrity, because everybody loves it. Being an artist is about pushing the limits, no? It's pushing the limits also of what people appreciate.
Yeah.
It's very easy for me to make a beautiful photograph and for you to get that response, wow, gee, kind of thing. It's not enough. That's the thing to be careful of. And once you have worked with a medium long enough, it's like back to Zakir. He knows how to make the audience clap. He just has to put the hammer to tune his tabla and he can get the audience to clap. That's not what it's about. He wants to push the limits of what you know and can appreciate as well, and himself. So he's pushing the medium, himself and the viewer. And I hope very much that I can do that with my work. So even the idea of what is considered beautiful or special or moving will change. And it's a big battle, not a battle, but it takes a lot longer when you come from a museum that is, from a medium that is as restricted as photography, where people have got used to either a magazine, book, or on the wall. None of those are good enough for me in themselves. If it's a book, it also has to be a book object. It also has to become an exhibition. So on the wall, I put my book objects. And the prints are no longer on the wall. They are in these museums that can open and close in different ways.
Right, right.
So I want to continuously, I think till the day I am alive, I will be changing and challenging and pushing. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. I don't want to be a photocopy machine that can photograph what comes in front of it.
So here's to enjoying the process of a new idea developing.
It's really about the process, and you have to nurture that time and be careful who you talk to about it. I say just try to contain it in yourself.
Yeah.
Allow your voice to build before you start looking for other people's approval. That's not what it's about. It's about your own voice.
Thank you, Dayanita Singh. And now we want you to explain the latest project that you're...
With great pleasure.
You're so obsessed with and
Yes.
involved with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. So this is the File Museum, and this is the Museum of Little Ladies. And in this museum, you have my mother's pictures as well. And the museums, as you can probably imagine, open and close like a hardback book. And I can change images between museums. So File Museum and Little Ladies are sibling museums. They are really joined at the hip. They come from the same place. Okay. But people are not always able to understand it. So I put in this little bit of text as a clue. But just this morning I realized what I have to do to establish that you cannot separate these two museums. I'm going to bring an image in from the Little Ladies into File Museum, and then you will see how they are siblings versus Museum of Photography and Museum of Furniture, which are cousins. So I designed this kind of structure which is very easy to change the images. So now you have the little lady in the middle of the File Museum, and you have the lady with the files, the young girl with the files in the Little Ladies Museum. So now it's very difficult to separate these two, but you will have to spend the time to see what happens when the little girl comes in here. I want you to physically engage with the work, not a passive viewing of photographs on the wall. So you have to come close to it, and you have to perhaps read the text. And then if you look at it from there, there's a reason why they're the same size. The images are the same size. But maybe I want to create a separation, and I don't want to make it so simple for you. So then I would just close this museum. File Museum has closed and become the File Museum. Right? Okay. And I can also close the Museum of Little Ladies. Now I don't need to make them so connected, because now the connection is there in the work. You'll be able to see that Little Ladies are here and File Room is here. And you also see the Museum of Little Ladies reflected in the Museum of Photography.
Right.
And then you start to see that there are devotees of Anandmayi Ma. You may not know who she is, but you might recognize her below. And then you start to see that there are little girls dressed in a similar way. So there's also a connection between the museums if you look closely. So like, you know, if you look here, you see a photograph of Sunil Dutt in the Museum of Photography. So you see his painting, and you see the ashes in an urn. And so you realize, okay, Sunil Dutt has passed away. But then you go to Museum of Chance, and you go back in time, because he's tying the pagadi for Kumar Gaurav, because Rajinder Kumar had died. Okay. So there are these connections between the museums as well. Right. And this museum, till yesterday, was called Museum of Little Ladies, because it is the little ladies. The little ladies that my mother photographed, and the little ladies that I photographed. Okay. And this is me when I was born, and that's me 2 years ago. So in this panel, you have 50 years. So now I'm going to call this the Museum of Time. It's my museum.
Yeah, because it traces your birth down to...
It's 50 years.
Yes.
And a lot of these girls, like look at Ohana, she's about 2 years old here.
Mm-hmm.
And she is, I think, about 20.
Okay.
So there are lots of these situations. Here's Mona with Aisha.
Mm-hmm.
Here, this girl grows up. So this is really a museum of time. So now I've decided I'm going to call it Museum of Time.
So you can be as flexible as you want.
The structure can open and close in different ways, as you saw. The images can change. There's a huge reserve collection inside. So if I wanted that I would make file museum only with Godrej cupboards, that's possible because there are 100 images in reserve inside. And if I wanted to make it with all the men with files or men, I can borrow from the Museum of Men.
Okay, right.
Because there too, there are some that might fit in here.
So but there are permutations and combinations to fit your changing interpretations.
Exactly, because I'm a living artist. Right. I'm not dead. So why does the museum space or the gallery space or the art space treat me as though I am not there? Yeah. I'm alive. I'm going to keep changing my mind. I'm going to find new connections between things, and I'm suddenly starting to see that there's a lot of women in the photographs in this museum. So maybe that becomes a separate museum, like Museum of Vitrines came out of Museum of Furniture. Or I don't know, I might start to say, I want to make a museum of socks. It's endless and it can go on and on. These are ongoing museums. I'm not going to let them get fossilized, as works often can get in a museum or a gallery space, because I come from the book world. Yeah. And I understand very well and love the idea of the dissemination of the image and the dissemination of one's work and the different audiences that there can be for the work. The art world is just a very small part of it. Yeah. I think what one does can have a much larger appeal, no? Yeah. I don't have to only focus my attention on the art world. My dream is to be selling posters on the footpath outside India Museum in Calcutta.
Oh, all the best.
Thank you.